Imagine being stuck in a forest, plagued with supernatural creatures that love to watch you relentlessly just so they can steal your face. Well, hold on to your hats while I tell you about the 2024 movie, The Watchers. The movie starts with a guy running through a forest, while a voiceover narration explains the ominous forest, where anyone who enters never comes out. The guy running suddenly stops at the landmarker and adjusts his watch. Written on the marker are bold words such as "point of no return." He starts running again, and after a while he arrives at the same point of no return, meaning he went in a circle. He checks his watch, and he realizes it's nighttime as he watches a bunch of birds fly off. He starts panicking and climbs a tree. Then he gets attacked by a bird and falls down. He's injured and bleeding. He drags himself to a tree bark. He looks in the distance, and he starts hearing growling until he sees something that spooks him, and suddenly he's dragged into a hole. The scene cuts to a pet store where we see our main character, Mina, smoking a vape and drawing a lady as she watches her boss make a sale. Her boss calls her into the office and gives her a bird, a golden parrot, to deliver to a zoo near Belfast. Mina agrees and takes the bird home. There she tells the parrot that her mother died 15 years ago, and today was her remembrance. She says she's going out and tells the bird to try not to die, and the parrot repeats it. She goes into the bathroom and puts on a wig. Then she goes to a bar and engages in conversation with a fine gentleman, filling his head with lies and pretending to be something she's not. The next day in her car, she tells the bird that she likes to play dress up and drives off. In the car, she receives a voice message from her sister, who tells her that she's sad Mina couldn't come to their mom's memorial and that she's worried and wishes Mina would call her back. Mina ignores the call and drives off, and we see a bunch of missing person posters. Mina drives into a forest, and the deeper she goes, her car starts to malfunction. So does her phone and her radio, and suddenly everything shuts down. She tries to turn the car on, but it doesn't work. She steps outside and notices that she's in a really spooky forest. Then she sees the point of no return sign, this time with the number 12. She goes back to her car, takes the bird, and starts walking in hopes of getting help nearby. She starts calling out for help as she walks. When she sees there's no one around, she tries to go back to the car, but surprise, surprise, it's gone. Then she goes even deeper into the forest looking for it. As she watches the sun go down, she names the bird Darwin as she watches a bunch of birds fly over her. Mina starts walking again, and she spots someone running. In the distance, she sees an old woman and chases her, asking for help. And then she sees some sort of construction. And the woman opens the door and tells Mina, "If you care for your life, you're going to have to run." She starts counting down, and Mina runs into the enclosure. There she meets 3 people: the old woman, whose name is Madeline, another girl called Kira, and a boy named Daniel. They all live inside this enclosure called the coop. Madeline tells Kira to help Mina up and make her stand at a giant mirror. There they tell her that there are monsters outside the coop, on the other side of the mirror. The monsters are called the Watchers, and they like to watch them all night until sunrise. Madeline then tells Mina to take a step forward. She does, and immediately she starts to hear applause from the other side. Madeline tells her they're welcoming her to the show. The next day, Mina takes Darwin and informs the others that she's living. Daniel tells her that she won't make it, but she leaves anyway. In the distance, she sees a young girl staring at her, and she starts running. She arrives at an opening, and Madeline taps her from behind and tells her she's not the first to try getting out, that they've all tried and failed. She tells her that the forest plays tricks on them and causes hallucinations. She tells her about the landmarks. She says they serve as a guide on the boundary and let them know how far away they are from the coop, and that if they go past the boundary, they won't be able to go back to the coop before sundown. She tells Mina that some guy called the professor built the coop and made the landmarks. She takes Mina back to the coop. Daniel starts announcing the events of the evening, while Madeline tells Mina to be herself. Kira puts on a song on the record player and starts dancing. Mina notices a tape of a romance reality show called Lair of Love, which was owned by the professor. The next morning, Kira takes Mina out and starts teaching her about flowers in the area. She tells Mina that she was married to a guy called John who had left the coop earlier. He was that guy we saw in the beginning. Kira tells her about the Watchers, that if you see them, it'll drive you mad. Then she takes her to a giant burrow and informs her that that's where the Watchers stay during the day because they can't come out during the day. Kira also says that she's been in the forest for about 5 months. Back at the coop, the group hangs around a campfire, and Madeline tells Mina that there are a few rules. And in unison, they all say, "Do not turn your back to the mirror. Do not open the door after dark. Do not go in the burrows. Always stay in the light." That night, Mina taps on the glass and listens on the outside to see if there will be any response, but nothing happens. She gives up and goes to sleep, and then suddenly, the watchers start tapping on the glass from the outside. And Madeline tells her to stay still and make sure the watchers see her. The next day, Mina follows Daniel while he goes hunting. He tells her that Madeline used to be a college professor. Mina then says she's skeptical about the watchers and decides to go down the burrow and convinces Daniel to help her. She goes down the burrow with Daniel, lowering her via a rope. She sees an old newspaper, an old teddy bear, a camera, and a bicycle. She makes Daniel take the bicycle and a bunch of the things upwards. Behind her, something starts making a sound. She notices and beckons for Daniel to bring down the rope. Then she hears a voice as a pale hand comes out of the shadows, but quickly recoils because its skin starts burning under the sunlight, just as Daniel lowers the ropes. Back at the coop, Madeline asked her where she got the things. Mina lies, and then Madeline asks her if she saw anything today, and Mina says nothing. Damn, this girl lies. Inside the coop, Daniel manages to get the camera working and connected to the TV, and they place it outside the coop so they can see the watcher. That night, someone shows up at the door, and they see his foot on the camera. Kira thinks it's John and starts calling him, and he responds, asking her to let him in. Madeline tells her that's not John, that it's a trick. She asks Mina one more time where she got the things from. Mina confesses that she went to the burrow, and she and Madeline get into an argument. Kira then decides she's opening the door. Madeline tells Kira to ask John a question that only he would know the answer to. Kira does, but John can't answer. Then she tells him to look into the camera so they can know it's him. He looks into the camera, and the moment he does something pulls him away, we see the silhouette of the watchers, and they smash the camera and the glass mirror from the outside, but it doesn't break. The group takes their place in front of the mirrors. Somehow they made it to the next morning, and Madeline threw the bicycle and all the things back into the burrow and said they'd find another way out. Mina then gets a flashback to her childhood and how she caused the accident of her mom's death by being an annoying child. We cut to the present, and we find Mina making drawings of the place, as well as marking the trees and picking up flowers. She overhears Madeline yelling at Daniel for not being good at hunting. She goes back to the coop and meets Kira. Mina goes to the floor and starts drawing again. She's been mapping out the forest on the floor. She notices that Kira has left the room. She runs and finds her at the edge of the burrow, where Kira tells her that she can feel that her husband is dead, and she wants to jump into the burrow to be with him. Then they hear a scream, and they find Daniel has tied up Madeline, and he runs off. Kira chases after him. Madeline tells Mina that the forest has gotten into his head. They get back to the coop, and they find that Daniel has locked them outside, and he refuses to open up for them. Then Madeline leads Mina to a thick bush of flowers and says that it will help mask their scent. As they hide, something growls on top of the bush, and it's a watcher. It's all slender and ominous. It doesn't notice them as it rises to its full height and calls all the other watchers. The scene with all of them together is pretty scary, though. They go towards the coop, and Daniel tells them that Mina and Madeline are outside, so the watchers go searching for them. Mina and Madeline run back to the coop, and Mina manages to convince Daniel to open the door by telling him her backstory. He opens the door, and Madeline berates Daniel when they go in. Then they all stand at the front of the mirror. There, Madeline tells them that she studied history on the outside and that she came searching for the watchers. She said she saw one once, and she confessed that the watchers are actually called fairies. They're shapeshifters who want to steal the appearance of humans, and that's why they watch them. Soon the group starts hearing their own voices from the outside as the watchers start to bang on the outside. The group realizes that the watchers are going to get in, so they start panicking. Daniel notices that there's a hatch underneath them. He bangs and manages to pry it open. They find a hatch that leads underground. They open it, and they all rush in and lock the hatch as the watchers break into the room. Inside the underground bunker, they find food and shelter. They also find tapes of the professor, where he talks about how he built the coop and the bunker to study the watchers. He talked about how he sacrificed men to build the place, how the Watchers are copying his likeness, how he captured a Watcher that was very different from the others, and how he could access all that power to cheat death. He tries to communicate with the Watcher on a clip, but it really doesn't work. Mina then plays the last video where the professor talks about how he's failed and that he's going to kill the Watcher he caught and then take out himself. He mentioned that he has a boat at the river, but he's not going to use it, and he tells them to follow the birds. He also tells them to destroy copies of his life's work so more people won't follow in his footsteps. He climbs up the bunker and we hear gunshots. The group then decides to use the boat to escape the forest the next day. They rest for the night when Kira and Daniel start dancing. Daniel tells a story of how he got lost in the forest. The next morning they head out to the forest and start making their way to the boundary. With the use of the marks in the map, they're able to make their way to the landmark. Mina releases Darwin and they follow its lead. They walk for quite a while until they find a stone sculpture on the floor that shows the fairies. Madeline explained that the Watchers used to live like gods with wings and magic until they were cursed and banished to this forest by humans. They continued running as the swarm of birds flew past them, and then they started hearing the screech of the Watchers. They arrive at the river, and Daniel and Kira start celebrating as Mina finds the boat. They run towards the boat, but Daniel hears John's voice from behind and decides to go help him. What an idiot. When the three manage to ready the boat, they notice that Daniel is with John. Kira starts screaming for him to run, but it's too late. The Watcher grabs him, writes something on his head, and then ends his life as the rest of the group paddle away. The Watchers all assume Daniel's appearance and watch them leave because they cannot leave the forest. So yeah, the trio managed to escape. Then they find a bus that takes them into town, and Mina decides that she's going to destroy the professor's records. She goes back home with Darwin, takes a bath, and then goes to the university where she finds more records of the Watchers. She also learned that the fairies used to have kids with humans, and the kids were called halflings. Then she notices a bunch of pictures on the professor's desk. So immediately she goes to see Kira. She shows her the pictures. They're photos containing Madeline. Turns out she was married to the professor, and she's been dead for a very long time, meaning the Madeline they know is actually a fairy. They decide that they're going to send her back, so they invite her to the house. Then a call pulls up, and it's Kira. Mina realizes that this Kira is actually Madeline. Madeline transforms into John and incapacitates Kira. She and Mina start fighting. She was born as a deformed fairy and was maltreated by the other fairies. She transforms into Mina and tries to kill her. Then Mina tells her that she's a halfling. That's why she's able to walk in the sun and leave the forest. She also tells her that there are others like her, so she can go look for them. The speech really gets to Madeline, so she starts to transform until she suddenly sprouts wings. She bids Mina goodbye and flies off. Then finally we see Mina talking to her sister, who is her twin, and she meets her sister's kids. She says she still sees Madeline. She appears to her in different forms, but she's okay with it. The scene cuts to outside Mina's house, and we see a little girl who is Madeline still watching Mina. End of movie.